This is the Yocal Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you a quick overview of the news in Idaho for the last week. We'll be looking at how Governor Little has signed an executive order to protect women, Caldwell's listening and changing course on its parking meters, Idaho national leaders speaking out against ranked choice voting, and so much more, particularly on the fires, as we go through the Midweek Report. Starting off here with our main story, Governor Little has taken a large step to protect women's sports in Idaho by signing the Defending Women's Sports Act through an executive order. He was joined by competitive swimmer Riley Gaines. Little at that affirmed Idaho's commitment to fairness in women's athletics, challenging the Biden administration's interpretation of Title IX, the one giving the separation of different sports there. Specifically, the order directs the State Board of Education to ensure public schools adhere to Idaho's laws on women's sports and to equal opportunities for female athletes. Little emphasized the biological differences that give male athletes an unfair advantage, stressing the importance of a level playing field with women who have dedicated years to the sport. This move builds on Idaho's 2020 legislation, making us one of the first states to defend women's sports legally. But moving forward, Gaines, being the main star of the show, praised the order as a stand against unjust sex discrimination. Also, Representative Barbara Earhart, if you've remembered us talking about her before, highlighted its significance in preserving Title IX's original intent. And speaking of protecting, something that needs to be done with downtown Caldwell, effective immediately, the Caldwell City Council has suspended the controversial downtown parking meter program. Praise the Lord! This decision comes after months of public outcry, legal concerns, and repeated negative impacts on local businesses. Like, for instance, people like myself not going to downtown because I don't want to pay for parking that much, and you can go to Nampa. The council voted to suspend the paid parking regulations and to terminate the operations agreement with the car park, the company managing the parking meters over there. Council member Diana Register emphasized that public voices were instrumental in this reversal. While parking is now free, the mayor wanted to get in a little bit there. Mayor Jerome Wagner noted that discussion on time limits might be necessary to prevent reverting to the previous parking issues. But moving forward, the suspension highlights the council's responsiveness to community concerns, which is a good thing. Give them credit where they're due. They're listening and changing course there, but also has raised some questions about the future of parking management there in downtown Caldwell. Business owners have expressed relief, hoping for an increase of customer traffic once the news kind of gets out that there's free parking again. However, they acknowledge the need for responsible parking practices by employees to support city efforts, and so that parking meters come back again. Speaking of responsible efforts and going a bit more nationally here, Idaho's national representatives are strongly opposing Proposition 1, which if you've listened to any time on the show, you'll know what we're talking about. But if you're new, it is the ballot initiative that would add ranked choice voting to Idaho's electoral system. In specific, Senator Mike Crapo has explicitly stated his opposition, while Senator Jim Risch has dismissed it as a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist. Representative Russ Fulcher, now going to the House, went even further, calling ranked choice voting a, quote, a scam, end quote, and urging voters to reject Proposition 1. But a key element is, though, that Representative Mike Simpson, the other gentleman over there in the House, has yet to make a public statement on this issue. So I guess take that as you will there. Idaho's congressional delegations are very united on this front against ranked choice voting and show the conservative resistance to a proposed ranked choice voting system. Their opposition does carry some weight, independent of different things. They are authority figures given in their roles at a national level and do have an effect here in Idaho. As November approaches, this aligns Idaho's national representatives present a formidable challenge against Proposition 1, potentially influencing some different voters' decision on this kind of controversial ballot measure. But hopefully, all in all, it wakes people up to know that it's on there, and then they can make an informed decision of how they lean on it. And speaking of being well-informed about Proposition 1 and ranked choice voting, which sadly is going to make it to the November ballot. That's a different story. If you want, go listen to the past midweek reports. There have been a lot of different groups in opposition that have grown up to stop this and just educate people. Organizations like Secure Idaho Elections are leading grassroots campaigns to highlight concern about CRV, calling it confusing, expensive, and a threat to election transparency. And if you feel this is only something that's happening with a bunch of political activists, the Secretary of State, Phil McGrain's analyst, supports these concerns, estimating the implementation cost, which we've talked about this, is between $25 to $40 million to implement a ranked choice voting system, and highlighted significant technical and legal challenges in doing so. Opposition groups also point out how other states, for example, Alaska, that has added ranked choice voting to their system, is trying to repeal it currently and using it as a cautionary tale. Moving forward, there's definitely a very heated debate over ranked choice voting in Idaho's electoral future. I've linked below the article that was done up there by the Kootenai County Press. They did a really good job of kind of summarizing a bunch of different resources you can go look at, or Secure Idaho Elections is another wonderful one as well if you want to get educated on that. Which, if you liked our first batch of stories here, please hit the like button on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter. It helps us reach more folks who love Idaho just like you. And continuing in all the Idaho goodness, and something that has been burning our lungs for the last week, wildfire season in Idaho is still very alive and real. Central Idaho has continued to blaze, and northern and southern Idaho halves have also had their fair share of wildfires. In specific, in central Idaho, which has had the biggest fires in the state, the big three that have been burning there for that area and just the whole state as a whole is the Wapita, Nellie, and Snag fires. The Wapita fire has burned 108,000 acres and is about 0% contained, so basically not at all. The Nellie fire, just a few miles to the west, has burned 48,172 acres, and a little better, it's 12% contained, but only 12% contained. And then lastly, the Snag fire east of the McCall/Cascade area has burned about 31,808 acres with only a 0% containment, and has triggered a ready evacuation order for those nearby. Don't lose hope if you're looking at the southern and northern part of the state, not the middle bit of there. Things are a bit better. There are a couple of wildfires, but most of them are in remote parts of Idaho and are no larger than about 4,000 acres. I know, 4,000 acres. Yeah, it's small. And then especially in southern Idaho, there are a couple that were started by thunderstorms earlier this week, but they've been detected and they're watching those very carefully, and they're not very large yet. Moving forward, firefighters across the state are working tirelessly to contain these blazes, with air support and ground crews being deployed to coordinate efforts to protect towns and natural resources. And speaking of the people that are to be protecting, but also there's a little bit of controversy going on over there, Blaine County Sheriff's race has taken a contentious turn. Democrat candidate Morgan Bayless has filed criminal defamation charges against his Republican opponent, Aaron Hugston. Specifically, Blaine claims that Hugston spread false accusations about him, including allegations of rape, child abuse, and drug offenses. Bayless acknowledges discussing past incidences openly during his campaign. He asserts that the other accusations are just unfounded. Hugston's campaign, however, maintains that they are exposing voters' concerns about Bayless's criminal record. The Republican candidate previously stated that Bayless attacked him for bringing, quote, a 15-year history of misconduct, end quote, to light, with the case referred to the Idaho State Police and potential civil action looming. The race has become increasingly heated, as you can guess there. As both sides stand firm in their position, the court and voters are left to decide on this high-stakes election which side they side with there. And speaking of high stakes and getting very high up in the air, inland crane employees working on Micron's expansion project in the Boise area are protesting for better pay, backed by the International Union of Operating Engineers and Local 302. Specifically, the strife involves the union claiming that crane operators are paid below prevailing wage standards. However, Inland Crane maintains its direct management approach, provides better overall compensation and quality of life for employees. The company suggests that allegations stem from a former employee who may not have fit in with their culture there. Inland Crane, as you might remember recently from the OSHA citation related to the Boise Airport hangar collapse, emphasized long-term employee retention and cooperation with proper investigative channels, being like, hey, look, people like to stay with us and doing stuff, and we're completely complying, so don't try to hang us here. Micron, while affirming its commitment to prevailing wage requirements, has stated that this dispute has not affected the expansion of the project there. For Micron's part, it has continued to affirm its commitment to prevailing wage requirements, stating that the dispute, though, has not affected the project's timeline and construction there. But moving forward, this situation definitely highlights how unions and company culture and the economy as a whole and the strain on it for prices and wages is really hitting a fever pitch. We're seeing that right now with this. Also, speaking of industry, but in a good way, Idaho Milk Products, a major dairy producer in Jerome, is set for a significant expansion in its new 183,000 square foot ice cream plant. The $200 million facility, scheduled to open in early 2026, marks the company's entry into the ice cream market, focusing on premium, indulgent ingredients for both bulk and novelty products. Specifically on the expansion there, this expansion builds on Idaho Milk Products' existing operations, which currently process about 1.6 billion pounds of raw milk annually. My goodness, they're like the federal government. CEO Doug McAbee emphasized the plant's role in adding value to milk sustainability. So basically a couple corporate buzzwords there. The project reflects the broader growth of the dairy industry in the Magic Valley area over there, home to numerous dairy processing plants, with dairy being one of the state's top agricultural exports, and also us being the nation's third largest milk producer. This expansion further solidifies our position as a big dairy producer in the United States here. Which, if you found any of these stories interesting and want to share them with friends and family so they know more about Idaho, please don't hesitate, because your shares help us spread the word about our beautiful state. And speaking of possibly spreading the word, Ketchum City Council has postponed a decision on a proposed 2% increase on local option taxes for lodging stays. So, breaking that all down, the tax aims to fund the city's ownership preservation program, which incentivizes local occupancy. Basically, we're taxing people if they don't live here locally. Specifically, supporters like Council Member Kootenai Hamilton argue for delaying it to allow the program to demonstrate success and build public support behind it. Opponents worry, though, however, about voter confusion and the potential negative impact of concurrent fire district measures, which they're also cramming in there. Councilmember Amanda Breen noted that a failed November vote would prevent reconsideration until 2025, so maybe be careful when we do this. The council plans to continue the discussion into the fall, potentially aiming for a ballot measure in 2025, just to build support on it. But moving forward towards November, the delay reflects the council's desire for more public support before proceeding. It also highlights delicate balance between addressing housing needs and the potential impact on tourism industry there in Ketchum, which is it's a really big part of that area there. And speaking of city councils and big areas, Canyon County's largest cities, Nampa and Caldwell, have finally adopted their 2025 fiscal year budgets, both for adopting levies for foregone property taxes. Specifically for Caldwell, Caldwell's $168 million budget includes $30 million in property taxes, with $290,000 in foregone taxes allocated to police and fire departments. The city approved 21 new positions, down from the initial 40 that they requested, so a little bit of a curtailment there, which is kind of actually good to see the government's controlling itself there. And then over in Nampa's budget turned out to be about $293 million, a $3.5 million decrease from last year, so comfort yourself with that, including $45 million in property taxes. Nampa is taking about $1.7 million in foregone taxes to support sewer infrastructure in its northern area, aiming to position itself to annex that area. Both cities faced internal debates over taking foregone taxes, with Nampa's discussion being particularly contentious, if you remember our reporting on that there. But overall, Caldwell focused more on maintaining reserves, while Nampa emphasized positioning for growth. Both cities implemented cost-cutting measures and adjusted for increased Percy and insurance costs. Overall, I think a pretty good win there. Speaking of developments and coming over to the other big horse in the room in the Treasure Valley, the village over there in Meridian is set to welcome North Italia, a modern Italian restaurant chain owned by the Cheesecake Factory. This new eatery will occupy the former Twiggs Bistro and Martini Bar space. This new eatery will occupy the former Twig's Bistro and Martini Bar space, bringing a nice Mediterranean experience to the village there, which I think will fully complete it there. The things you can expect there: the North Italian's menu features homemade pasta, pizzas, and entrees like chicken parmesan, and complemented by Italian-inspired cocktails and seasonal offerings. Hugh Crawford, VP of Property Management for Central Cal, has said that they are very excited about the addition, noting it's been a long-sought restaurant for the village. The chain, currently operating in about 14 states, aims to offer a contemporary take on Italian cuisine in an upscale but casual setting. You can expect North Italian to open in about 2025, making it the first Idaho location of theirs, and promising to add a lovely touch to the village over there in Meridian, with an Italian twist. And speaking of an interesting twist, I did not see this coming when I read this article. McCall has appointed Forrest Atkinson as its new city manager, succeeding Annette Spickard. Atkinson does bring a very unique background with his role, having spent 20 years with the U.S. State Department, most recently as the U.S. Embassy in Peru. Specifically looking at his background there, his early career included a stint as an urban planner in San Francisco, with a master's degree in urban and regional planning from UC Berkeley. Atkinson is set to oversee McCall's daily operations and advise the city council. Mayor Bob Glees expressed confidence in Atkinson's ability to lead McCall into a prosperous future. Moving forward, Atkinson's appointment follows a selection process that incorporated public and council feedback, setting the stage for a new chapter for McCall's new municipal leadership. Coming back down to the Treasure Valley, Boise School District is launching a new initiative to address student mental health, following several tragic losses this year. The district is introducing the SOS, Signs of Suicide curriculum for 7th and 12th graders, aimed at educating students on recognizing warning signs and seeking help. Additionally, a new, quote, Hope Squad, end quote, class will focus on peer-to-peer mental health assistance in middle and high schools. The hope and objective is that these efforts would show that the district is committed to tackling a serious issue. Their effectiveness does remain to be seen. Students like Emerson Sherry and Dash Stophanis express support for the programs, highlighting the importance of student-led initiatives. However, the mental nature of suicides raises questions about whether these measures will be sufficient to prevent future tragedies. The district's approach, emphasized by District Council Supervisor Jason Shanks, is hoped to increase mental health literacy among students and staff, and therefore help with awareness and preventing future tragic events. And speaking of tragic things, I have to head out here. Thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the Midweek Report, make sure to check out the Sunday show, where John and I talk about the main stories going on in Idaho and dive into them. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, email us at lyimedia@protonmail.com or on Twitter by tweeting us at Yocal Idaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now. I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.